Danny Martinez pressed his face against the cold window of his father's pickup truck, watching the towering glass and steel structure of Meridian Financial Plaza rise into the Chicago skyline. At 8 years old, he was mesmerized by the way the building seemed to pierce the clouds, its windows reflecting the morning sun like 1,000 diamonds. His father, Roberto Martinez, barely glanced at the impressive structure as he drove past it every morning on his way to the warehouse district where he worked as a janitor. "Stop staring at that thing," Roberto muttered, taking a long drag from his cigarette. "Buildings like that aren't for people like us, Mijo. The sooner you learn that, the better off you'll be." Danny didn't understand why his father always seemed angry when he looked at the tall buildings downtown, or why he got that hard look in his eyes whenever Danny talked about wanting to work in an office someday. Roberto had been cleaning office buildings for 15 years, working nights so he could be home during the day, while Danny's mother Maria worked at the local grocery store. The family lived in a cramped, 2-bedroom apartment in Pilsen, where the walls were thin and the rent was always a struggle to pay on time. Roberto took pride in his work, but Danny could see the way his father's shoulders slumped with exhaustion every morning when he came home smelling of industrial cleaners and disappointment. "I want to work in a building like that when I grow up," Danny announced one morning as they drove past Meridian Plaza on the way to drop him off at school. Roberto's laugh was bitter and sharp. "You want to work in there? Keep dreaming, kid. You'll be lucky if you end up cleaning toilets in a place like that, just like your old man." The words stung, but Danny was used to his father's harsh assessments of his future prospects. Roberto seemed to take perverse pleasure in reminding his son that the Martinez family was destined for manual labor and struggle. "College is for rich kids," Roberto would say whenever Danny brought home good grades or talked about his teacher's encouragement. "We're working people, Danny. The sooner you accept that, the sooner you can start being useful." Danny's mother Maria tried to soften Roberto's constant negativity, but she was exhausted from working double shifts and dealing with her husband's increasingly bitter worldview. "Your father just doesn't want you to be disappointed," she would whisper to Danny when Roberto was sleeping. "He's trying to protect you from getting your hopes up too high." But Danny couldn't accept his father's limited vision of what was possible. He excelled in school despite having no quiet place to study at home, often doing his homework in the 24-hour laundromat down the street where the fluorescent lights stayed on and nobody bothered him. His teachers noticed his potential early, recommending him for advanced classes and encouraging him to think about college scholarships. "My dad says college is a waste of time for people like us," Danny told his 8th-grade counselor, Mrs. Rodriguez, who had called him in to discuss his test scores and grades. Mrs. Rodriguez looked at him with a mixture of sadness and determination. "Danny, your father is wrong. You have exceptional ability, and there are programs specifically designed to help students like you succeed in college and beyond." The conversation with Mrs. Rodriguez planted a seed that grew despite his father's constant attempts to crush it. Danny began staying after school to use the computer lab, teaching himself about business and finance while his classmates played video games or hung out at the park. He read everything he could find about successful people who had grown up poor, looking for patterns and strategies he could apply to his own life. When Danny announced that he'd been accepted to the University of Illinois with a full academic scholarship, Roberto's reaction was predictably negative. "You think you're better than us now?" Roberto demanded, his voice slurred from the beer he'd been drinking since getting home from his night shift. "You think some fancy college is going to change what you are? You'll never amount to anything, Danny. You're a Martinez from Pilsen, and that's all you'll ever be." Maria cried when she heard about the scholarship, but her tears were mixed with fear about how Roberto would react to Danny's success. The family dynamic had become increasingly tense as Danny's achievements highlighted Roberto's own sense of failure and limitation. "Maybe your father is right," Maria said quietly. "Maybe it's safer to stay close to home, to work with your hands like the rest of the family." But Danny refused to be held back by his father's fears and limitations. He left for college with 2 suitcases and $300 he'd saved from his part-time job at the local mechanic shop. Roberto didn't say goodbye or wish him luck. The last words Danny heard from his father before leaving for university were spoken to his mother in the kitchen. "He'll be back in 6 months with his tail between his legs. College kids like him don't make it in the real world. College was a revelation for Danny. For the first time in his life, he was surrounded by people who believed in education, ambition, and the possibility of changing one's circumstances through hard work and intelligence. He threw himself into his business studies with the intensity of someone who understood that education was his only escape route from the cycle of limitation that had trapped his family for generations. Danny worked multiple jobs to cover his living expenses, cleaning offices at night just like his father, but with a crucial difference. He saw the work as temporary, a stepping stone rather than a destination. While mopping floors in downtown Chicago office buildings, he would study the business magazines left behind by executives, teaching himself about finance, real estate, and investment strategies. His grades were exceptional, but more importantly, Danny learned to network and build relationships with professors and successful students who could help him understand how business really worked. He joined the investment club, where he met students from wealthy families who casually discussed trust funds and family businesses as if such things were normal parts of life. During his junior year, Danny secured an internship at a major investment firm in downtown Chicago. The irony wasn't lost on him that he was now working inside the types of buildings his father had said were beyond his reach. He called home to share the news, hoping that his success might finally earn his father's respect and approval. "So you're playing dress-up with the rich kids," Roberto said when Danny called to tell him about the internship. "Don't forget where you come from, me Joe. When they're done using you, you'll be right back where you started." The conversation lasted less than 5 minutes before Roberto hung up, leaving Danny staring at the phone in his dorm room, wondering why his father seemed so invested in his failure. The internship led to a full-time job offer after graduation, starting at a salary higher than both his parents' incomes combined. Danny moved back to Chicago and rented a small apartment downtown, close enough to visit his family but far enough away to maintain the psychological distance he needed to continue growing professionally. His parents rarely visited his apartment, and when they did, Roberto would make sarcastic comments about Danny's fancy lifestyle and express skepticism about the sustainability of his success. "This won't last," Roberto would mutter, examining Danny's business suits and diplomas with obvious discomfort. "People like us aren't meant for this kind of life." Danny's success continued to accelerate throughout his 20s. He moved from investment banking to private equity, learning how to identify undervalued assets and transform them into profitable enterprises. His childhood experience of watching his father struggle financially had given him a unique perspective on risk management and the importance of diversification. By age 30, Danny had accumulated enough capital to start his own investment fund, focusing on acquiring and renovating commercial real estate properties throughout Chicago. His understanding of working-class neighborhoods, combined with his financial expertise, allowed him to identify opportunities that other investors overlooked. Roberto's health began declining in his mid-50s, the result of decades of physical labor and stress. He was forced to switch from night-shift cleaning work to day-shift maintenance duties, but his employer assured him that his job was secure as long as his health held out. Danny offered to help with medical expenses, but Roberto refused to accept what he called charity from his son. "I don't need your money," Roberto insisted during one of their increasingly rare conversations. "I've been taking care of this family since before you were born, and I'll keep taking care of it long after you come crashing back down to earth." The rejection hurt, but Danny had learned to channel his emotional pain into professional motivation. Danny's investment fund had grown into one of the most successful real estate development companies in the Midwest. He specialized in acquiring distressed commercial properties and transforming them into modern, profitable office complexes. His reputation for fair dealing and quality renovation work made him a sought-after partner for major corporations looking to relocate or expand their operations. The phone call that would change everything came on a Tuesday morning in October. Danny's assistant informed him that Meridian Financial Plaza, the building he'd stared at in wonder as a child, was going up for sale. The current owners were facing financial difficulties and needed to liquidate their assets quickly. The asking price was steep, but Danny's analysis showed that the building was significantly undervalued given its prime location and potential for modernization. Danny spent weeks conducting due diligence on the property, examining everything from the building's structural integrity to its tenant roster and lease agreements. As he reviewed the maintenance contracts, he was surprised to see a familiar name on the list of service providers: Roberto Martinez, employed by Citywide Cleaning Services as a day-shift maintenance supervisor for the building's lower floors. The irony was almost too perfect to believe. The building that had represented everything his father said was beyond Danny's reach was now within his grasp, and his father worked there every day, cleaning the offices and maintaining the facilities that Danny could soon own. Danny spent sleepless nights weighing the emotional implications of the purchase against the clear financial opportunity it represented. After careful consideration, Danny decided to proceed with the acquisition. This wasn't about revenge or proving a point to his father, it was simply good business. Meridian Financial Plaza was an excellent investment opportunity that would provide substantial returns while allowing him to implement his vision for modern, efficient office space. The closing took place on a Friday afternoon in December. Danny signed the final papers in a conference room on the 42nd floor of the building he now owned, looking out over the Chicago skyline where his father was probably finishing his maintenance rounds 30 floors below. The building was officially his, along with all the responsibilities and opportunities that came with owning a major commercial property. Danny's first priority was meeting with all the building's employees and service contractors to assure them that their jobs were secure under the new ownership. He scheduled individual meetings with department heads and supervisors, wanting to understand the building's operations from the ground up before implementing any changes. Roberto's supervisor called him into the office the following Monday to inform him that there would be a meeting with the new building owner to discuss the maintenance department's future. Roberto assumed it would be another corporate cost-cutting exercise where longtime employees would be laid off in favor of cheaper contractors. "These rich guys are all the same," Roberto complained to his coworker Miguel as they rode the service elevator down to the meeting room. "They buy a building and immediately start looking for ways to squeeze more profit out of it. Mark my words, half of us will be gone by Christmas." Roberto walked into the conference room, expecting to meet another cold corporate executive in an expensive suit. Instead, he found himself face-to-face with his son, wearing a tailored navy blazer and sitting at the head of a polished conference table. For a moment, neither man spoke, the weight of their complicated history filling the space between them. "Hello, Dad," Danny said quietly, his voice steady despite the emotional turbulence he felt. "I wanted to meet with you personally to discuss your position here and the future of the maintenance department." Roberto stared at his son in shock, his mind struggling to process the impossible scene before him. The boy he'd told would never amount to anything was sitting in the owner's chair of the building where Roberto had worked for the past 3 years. The son he'd dismissed as a dreamer now controlled Roberto's livelihood and the jobs of everyone Roberto supervised. "This is some kind of joke," Roberto said finally, his voice hoarse with disbelief. "You're telling me you bought this building? You own Meridian Financial Plaza?" Danny nodded calmly, understanding that his father would need time to absorb the reality of the situation. "I acquired the building last Friday," Danny confirmed. "I wanted to meet with all the department supervisors to discuss my plans for the property and to assure everyone that their jobs are secure. Your work here has been excellent, according to the previous owners, and I have no intention of making changes to the maintenance staff." Roberto slumped in his chair, the full weight of the reversal hitting him all at once. For 30 years, he'd told his son that people like them didn't belong in buildings like this, that Danny should lower his expectations and accept his place in the working class. Now Danny literally owned the building, while Roberto remained an employee cleaning its floors and emptying its trash cans. "I don't understand," Roberto whispered, his voice cracking with emotion. "How did this happen? How did you get the money to buy a building like this?" Danny had prepared for this question, knowing that his father would struggle to comprehend the magnitude of his success. "I built an investment company over the past 15 years, Danny explained patiently. "I started with the education you said was worthless, worked my way up through various financial firms, and eventually accumulated enough capital to start my own fund. This building represents a sound investment opportunity, nothing more or less." Roberto's eyes filled with tears as the implications of his son's success became clear. Every dismissive comment, every prediction of failure, every attempt to limit Danny's ambitions had been proven spectacularly wrong. The son he'd tried to keep down had risen to heights Roberto couldn't have imagined, while Roberto himself remained exactly where he'd always been. "I was wrong," Roberto said, his voice barely above a whisper. "I was wrong about everything. About you, about what was possible, about what people like us could achieve." The admission cost him deeply, but Roberto knew it needed to be said. "I'm sorry, Danny. I'm sorry for not believing in you, for trying to hold you back, for being the father who told his son he'd never amount to anything." Danny felt his own eyes welling up as he watched his father finally acknowledge the damage his negativity had caused. "Dad, I need you to understand something. I didn't buy this building to humiliate you, or to prove you wrong. I bought it because it's a good investment. But I also need you to know that your doubts and limitations don't define me anymore. They never did." The conversation that followed was the most honest they'd ever had. Roberto explained how his own father had crushed his dreams, how generational poverty had taught him to fear hope because disappointment was too painful to bear. He'd tried to protect Danny from that pain by eliminating his expectations, not understanding that he was actually perpetuating the cycle of limitation. "I thought I was being realistic," Roberto admitted. "I thought I was preparing you for the world as it really is. I didn't understand that the world could be different, that you could make it different through your own efforts." Danny offered his father a promotion to head of facilities management for the entire building, with a salary increase and benefits package that would allow Roberto to move his family out of the cramped Pilsen apartment. But more importantly, he offered Roberto the chance to be proud of his son's achievements, rather than threatened by them. "I want you to work for me," Danny said, "but only if you can accept that your son became successful not despite being a Martinez from Pilsen, but because being a Martinez from Pilsen taught him the value of hard work and determination." Roberto accepted the promotion and spent the remaining years of his career helping Danny transform Meridian Financial Plaza into one of Chicago's premier office complexes. He learned to take pride in his son's success and to share the story with anyone who would listen about how his boy had grown up to own the building where he worked. Years later, when Danny's own children asked their grandfather about his son's success, Roberto would tell them about the little boy who used to press his face against the truck window, staring up at the tall buildings with wonder and determination. "Your father saw something I couldn't see," Roberto would say. "He saw possibility where I only saw barriers. That's the difference between dreamers and people who make dreams come true." Danny kept his father's original office in the maintenance department, now converted into Roberto's executive suite, as a reminder that success wasn't about escaping your origins, but about transforming them into sources of strength. The boy who'd been told he'd never amount to anything had become a man who understood that the most valuable inheritance wasn't money or property, but the refusal to accept other people's limitations as your own destiny. The building that had once represented everything Danny couldn't have had become the foundation of everything he'd built. And in the end, the greatest victory wasn't owning the building where his father worked, but helping his father understand that love sometimes meant believing in possibilities that seemed impossible, and that the words, "you'll never amount to anything," could become the motivation to amount to everything. Roberto's transformation from skeptical father to proud supporter didn't happen overnight, but Danny was patient with the process. The first few months after the revelation were awkward, with Roberto struggling to find his footing in a world where his son was suddenly his boss. The other maintenance workers initially treated Roberto differently, unsure whether his family connection to the owner would change workplace dynamics. "Act like nothing's changed," Danny instructed his father during one of their weekly check-ins. "You earned your position here through your work ethic, not because you're my father. The respect you have from your team comes from 15 years of showing up every day and doing your job well." Roberto appreciated his son's approach, understanding that Danny was protecting both of their reputations by maintaining professional boundaries. Maria's reaction to the news was a mixture of overwhelming pride and deep regret. When Roberto came home and told her that Danny owned the Meridian Financial Plaza, she burst into tears and didn't speak for nearly an hour. "All those years," she whispered finally. "All those times I should have stood up to you when you told him he wasn't good enough. I let you break that boy's spirit, and he succeeded anyway." The guilt Maria felt about her passive role in Roberto's treatment of Danny became a source of family tension that needed to be addressed. Danny arranged for family counseling sessions, understanding that healing their relationships would require professional guidance and honest examination of old patterns and wounds. "I wasn't just protecting myself from disappointment," Roberto admitted during one particularly difficult session. I was protecting myself from feeling like a failure. If Danny succeeded where I hadn't, it meant I could have done better too, and that was too painful to face. The therapist helped Roberto understand that his son's success didn't diminish his own worth, but rather reflected the strength and resilience Roberto had passed down despite his verbal pessimism. Danny's business continued to expand, with Meridian Financial Plaza serving as the flagship property in a portfolio that grew to include 12 major commercial buildings throughout the Midwest. His success attracted attention from business magazines and local news outlets, who were intrigued by the story of the janitor's son, who had become one of Chicago's most successful real estate developers. The American dream isn't dead, Danny told a reporter from Chicago Business Journal during a feature interview. But it requires more than just hard work. It requires education, strategic thinking, and the ability to see opportunities that others might miss. Most importantly, it requires refusing to accept other people's limitations as your own truth. Roberto was interviewed for the same article, and his comments revealed how much his perspective had changed. I spent years trying to prepare my son for failure because I was afraid success was impossible for people like us, he said. But Danny taught me that people like us can become whoever we choose to be through education and determination. The family's financial situation improved dramatically, as Danny ensured his parents could move into a comfortable home in a safe neighborhood. But Roberto insisted on continuing to work, finding purpose and dignity in his role overseeing building operations. I'm not ready to retire, he told Danny. This job gives me meaning, and now I can take pride in knowing that my son built all of this. Danny's success also created opportunities for him to give back to the community where he'd grown up. He established a scholarship fund for students from Pilsen and other working-class neighborhoods, specifically targeting young people whose families might not understand or support their educational ambitions. The fund included mentorship programs and career counseling designed to help students navigate the transition from poverty to professional success. I want these kids to know that education isn't betraying your family or community, Danny explained to the scholarship recipients during their orientation meeting. Education is how you become positioned to lift up your family and community. Success that doesn't include helping others isn't real success. One of the first scholarship recipients was Isabella Santos, a 17-year-old whose father worked alongside Roberto in building maintenance. Isabella's academic achievements were remarkable, but her father was suspicious of college education and worried that his daughter would become estranged from her family if she pursued higher learning. My dad thinks college will make me think I'm better than everyone else, Isabella confided to Danny during a mentorship meeting. He's afraid I'll leave and never come back, just like his brother did 20 years ago. Danny understood the fear intimately and arranged for Isabella's father to meet with Roberto, hoping that one father's transformation might influence another's perspective. The conversation between the two fathers was powerful. Roberto shared his own journey from skepticism to support, explaining how his fear of disappointment had almost cost him his relationship with his son. Our children's success doesn't mean they're leaving us behind, Roberto told Isabella's father. It means they're building bridges so the whole family can cross over to something better. Danny's romantic life had taken a back seat to his business ambitions throughout his 20s and early 30s. But his growing confidence and stability made him more open to serious relationships. He met Elena Gutierrez, a pediatric surgeon from a similar background, at a charitable fundraiser for children's healthcare. Their shared understanding of navigating between working-class origins and professional success created an immediate connection. My parents still introduce me as their daughter who became a doctor, like it's some kind of miracle, Elena told Danny during their first dinner together. They're proud, but they're also confused about how I got here and whether I still belong in their world. Danny understood completely, having experienced the same tension between honoring his roots and embracing his growth. Elena's parents were initially intimidated by Danny's wealth and success, worried that their daughter was becoming involved with someone whose lifestyle they couldn't understand or relate to. But Danny's genuine respect for working people and his close relationship with his own parents helped bridge the cultural gap between the families. Roberto played an unexpected role in helping Elena's parents feel comfortable with Danny's success. He's still the same boy who used to help me fix cars in the alley, Roberto assured Elena's father during a family barbecue. The money and buildings don't change who he is inside. If anything, success has made him more grateful for where he came from. Danny and Elena's wedding was held in the community center where Danny had tutored kids during high school, with guests ranging from billionaire business associates to maintenance workers and scholarship recipients. The mix of social classes and backgrounds reflected Danny's commitment to remaining connected to all aspects of his journey. Roberto's speech at the wedding reception brought many guests to tears. "I spent years telling my son he'd never amount to anything," he said, his voice strong and clear. "I was wrong about what he could accomplish, but I was also wrong about what amounting to something really means. Success isn't about how high you climb or how much you accumulate. Success is about how many people you lift up along the way." The birth of Danny and Elena's first child, a daughter they named Sophia, marked another milestone in the family's healing journey. Roberto, now in his 60s and officially retired from building maintenance, became a devoted grandfather who was determined not to repeat the mistakes he'd made with Danny. "Misha, you can be anything you want to be," Roberto would whisper to baby Sophia during his daily visits. "Your papa built an empire from nothing, your mama saves children's lives every day, and you have their blood running through your veins. The world is waiting for you to show it what you can do." Maria, now free from the financial stress that had overshadowed much of her adult life, enrolled in community college to pursue the nursing degree she'd abandoned when Danny was born. At 58, she was the oldest student in most of her classes, but her determination impressed her instructors and classmates. "It's never too late to pursue your dreams," Maria told a local newspaper that featured her story about returning to school. "My son taught me that limitations are often choices we make, not realities we have to accept. If he could build a business empire starting with nothing, I can certainly earn the degree I've always wanted." Danny's business empire continued to grow, but he remained personally involved in operations at Meridian Financial Plaza, the building that had started everything. He converted one floor into a conference center, specifically designed for hosting scholarship program events, community meetings, and educational workshops for working-class families. The building that had once symbolized everything Danny couldn't have became a symbol of everything he was giving back. Roberto took particular pride in maintaining the scholarship program conference room, ensuring it was always perfectly prepared for events that would help other young people follow in his son's footsteps. As Sophia grew into a toddler, Danny often brought her to visit the building, showing her the maintenance areas where her grandfather worked and explaining how every job in the building was important to its success. "Abuelo taught me that honest work has dignity," Danny would tell Sophia as they walked through the building together. "Everyone who works here contributes to making this place special." Roberto's relationship with Sophia represented his chance at redemption, an opportunity to be the encouraging grandfather he hadn't known how to be as a father. He taught her Spanish while reading her stories about brave children who overcame obstacles through determination and kindness. "Tu papá es un ejemplo de lo que es posible," he would tell her in Spanish. "Your daddy is an example of what's possible." The scholarship program had expanded to serve over 200 students annually, with a 93% college graduation rate and an 87% rate of graduates returning to work in their home communities. Danny took particular satisfaction in tracking the careers of former scholarship recipients, who had become teachers, doctors, lawyers, and business owners in neighborhoods where such success stories had once been rare. The goal was never just to help individual students escape poverty, Danny explained to a conference of philanthropists interested in replicating his model. The goal was to create a pipeline of educated, successful people who would remain connected to their communities and help transform them from within. Success that abandons its origins isn't sustainable or meaningful. Roberto, now in his late 60s, had become an unofficial spokesperson for the program, sharing his story of transformation with parents who were skeptical about their children's educational ambitions. His talks to community groups always began with the same admission. "I told my son he'd never amount to anything because I was afraid to hope. Don't make my mistake. Your children can achieve anything if you give them permission to dream." Danny's success had attracted acquisition offers from larger real estate companies and private equity firms, but he consistently declined deals that would compromise his mission-driven approach to business. "This company exists to prove that success and service can go hand in hand," he told investors who questioned his decision to prioritize community impact over maximum profit. "That's not negotiable." The 10th anniversary of Danny's acquisition of Meridian Financial Plaza was marked with a celebration that brought together scholarship recipients, building tenants, community leaders, and family members. Roberto, now officially retired but still volunteering with the scholarship program, gave the opening remarks to a crowd gathered in the building's lobby. 10 years ago, my son bought this building and offered me a chance to be proud instead of bitter, Roberto said, his voice carrying clearly through the marble-walled space. Today, I'm standing in a building my son owns, surrounded by young people whose lives he's changed, in a community that's stronger because he never forgot where he came from. Danny watched his father speak with tears in his eyes, remembering the angry, disappointed man who had driven past this same building every morning, telling his 8-year-old son that such places weren't for people like them. The transformation in Roberto was as remarkable as Danny's own journey from poverty to prosperity. As the celebration continued around them, Danny and Roberto stood together looking up at the soaring lobby ceiling of Meridian Financial Plaza. "You know what the best part is?" Roberto asked his son quietly. "It's not that you proved me wrong about what you could accomplish, it's that you proved me wrong about what love looks like. Real love believes in possibilities, even when they seem impossible." Danny smiled, understanding that his father's words represented more than just an apology for past mistakes. They represented a commitment to supporting Sophia's dreams, whatever they might be, and to ensuring that the next generation of their family would grow up believing in their own unlimited potential. The boy who had been told he'd never amount to anything had indeed amounted to everything he'd dreamed of, but more importantly, he'd helped his father understand that the greatest measure of success wasn't what you achieved for yourself, but what you made possible for others. The building that had once seemed impossibly out of reach had become the foundation for reaching back and lifting up everyone who had been told the same lie Danny had once believed about his own limitations. Standing in the lobby of Meridian Financial Plaza, surrounded by family and community, Danny realized that his father's harsh words had inadvertently given him the greatest gift possible: the burning determination to prove that no one has the right to define another person's potential. In the end, "You'll never amount to anything," had become the rallying cry that drove him to amount to everything, and more importantly, to help others do the same. 15 years after the acquisition of Meridian Financial Plaza, Danny stood in his corner office, watching his teenage daughter Sophia volunteer at the building's community center. At 16, she was already showing the same drive and intelligence that had propelled Danny's rise, but with the confidence that came from growing up in a family that believed in her potential rather than questioned it. Sophia had developed her own vision for social impact, focusing on environmental sustainability and technology access for underserved communities. She'd convinced Danny to install solar panels and energy-efficient systems throughout his building portfolio, turning his real estate empire into a model for environmental responsibility. "Why should making money cost the planet?" she'd asked him when proposing the green retrofits. "Success should make things better for everyone, including future generations." Roberto, now 73 but still sharp and active, served as Sophia's biggest cheerleader and advisor. The grandfather who told bedtime stories about brave children overcoming obstacles had become a mentor who helped Sophia understand that her advantages came with responsibilities. "Tu abuelo learned the hard way that fear disguised as protection can hurt the people we love most," he would tell her when she faced challenges or setbacks. The scholarship program had evolved into something much larger than Danny had originally envisioned. With Sophia's input and technological expertise, they'd created an online platform that connected scholarship recipients with mentors, job opportunities, and each other. The network now included over 1,500 graduates working in various fields, many of whom had started their own businesses or nonprofit organizations in their home communities. "We're not just changing individual lives anymore," Danny told Elena as they reviewed the program's latest impact report. "We're creating a generational shift in entire neighborhoods. Kids are growing up seeing college graduates and business owners who look like them and come from the same streets they do." Elena's medical practice had grown into a nonprofit clinic system serving low-income families throughout Chicago. Her partnership with Danny's foundation provided scholarships specifically for students interested in healthcare careers, creating a pipeline of doctors, nurses, and medical technicians who understood the challenges facing underserved communities. The clinic system had become Sophia's summer internship destination, where she learned about healthcare disparities while developing technology solutions to improve patient access and care coordination. Her app for scheduling medical appointments and tracking medications had been adopted by several community health centers across the city. Roberto's health had remained remarkably good for his age, partly due to the sense of purpose he'd found in his volunteer work with the scholarship program. He spent his days mentoring young men whose fathers struggled with the same fears and limitations he'd once harbored, helping break cycles of discouragement before they could take root. "I meet fathers all the time who remind me of myself 20 years ago," Roberto told Danny during one of their regular lunch meetings. "Men who work hard but can't imagine their children rising above their circumstances. I tell them what I wish someone had told me, that believing in your child's potential isn't naive, it's necessary." Maria had completed her nursing degree and worked for several years in Elena's clinic system before deciding to pursue a master's degree in public health. At 65, she was conducting research on healthcare access barriers in immigrant communities, turning her own family's struggles into data that could help policymakers create better support systems. "Your mother is living proof that it's never too late to pursue your dreams," Elena told Sophia as they watched Maria present her research findings at a medical conference. She spent 30 years believing that education wasn't for people like her, but once she started believing in herself, there was no stopping her. Danny's business had weathered the economic challenges of the past decade by maintaining its focus on community development and sustainable practices. While other real estate companies struggled with changing market conditions, Danny's properties remained profitable because they served communities that valued long-term stability over short-term gains. The success had brought opportunities for expansion into other cities, but Danny remained committed to Chicago and particularly to the neighborhoods where he'd grown up. "I could build buildings anywhere," he explained to investors who urged him to expand nationally. "But impact comes from deep community connections, and those take time to develop. I'd rather transform one city completely than expand superficially across many markets." Sophia's junior year of high school brought college recruitment letters from prestigious universities across the country, but she seemed most interested in programs that would allow her to study business and environmental science simultaneously. She'd already been accepted into an early admission program at Northwestern, following in her father's footsteps while pursuing her own unique interests. "I want to prove that business success and environmental responsibility aren't competing goals," Sophia told the scholarship program participants during her volunteer presentation. "My dad proved that you can make money while making communities stronger. I want to prove that you can build wealth while healing the planet." Roberto beamed with pride during Sophia's presentation, remembering the little boy who'd pressed his face against truck windows to stare at tall buildings. "She has your vision," he told Danny afterward, "but she also has something you had to develop over time. The absolute confidence that she can achieve whatever she sets her mind to." The family faced its first real test of their transformed dynamics when Danny's business encountered serious financial challenges during an economic downturn. Several major tenants defaulted on their leases, and for the first time since acquiring Meridian Financial Plaza, Danny faced the possibility of losing properties and laying off employees. Roberto's response to his son's crisis revealed how completely his perspective had changed. Instead of expressing pessimism or saying, "I told you so," he offered practical support and unwavering confidence in Danny's ability to navigate the difficulties. "You've overcome bigger obstacles than this," Roberto assured his son, "and you're not facing this alone anymore." Sophia watched her father handle the business crisis with grace and strategic thinking, never allowing panic or desperation to drive his decisions. The experience taught her valuable lessons about resilience and leadership that no classroom could have provided. "Dad never gave up on finding solutions," she told her grandfather. "Even when things looked really bad, he kept believing there was a way through." Danny ultimately saved the business by converting several properties into mixed-use developments that included affordable housing units alongside commercial spaces. The innovation not only solved his immediate financial problems but created a new model for urban development that other cities began studying and replicating. "Sometimes crisis forces innovation that wouldn't have happened otherwise," Danny reflected when the business had stabilized. "If we hadn't faced those challenges, we might never have discovered that affordable housing and commercial development could support each other so effectively." The near crisis also strengthened Danny's commitment to maintaining strong relationships with his tenants and employees. He'd learned that businesses built on genuine community connections were more resilient than those focused purely on profit maximization. When people trust you and believe in your mission, they'll work with you through difficult times instead of abandoning you at the first sign of trouble. Sophia's high school graduation speech made local news because of her unique perspective on success and social responsibility. Speaking to her classmates from diverse economic backgrounds, she challenged them to think beyond individual achievement toward collective impact. "My grandfather once told my father that he'd never amount to anything," Sophia said to the packed auditorium. "But my father proved that when someone believes in your potential, you can achieve things that seemed impossible." Today I'm challenging all of us to believe in each other's potential and to use our success to create opportunities for people who come after us. Roberto wiped away tears as he listened to his granddaughter speak, understanding that the cycle of limitation and discouragement that had nearly destroyed his relationship with Danny had been permanently broken. Sophia would grow up believing in her own power, while understanding her responsibility to use that power for good. The summer before Sophia's freshman year of college, she worked full-time at her father's company, learning every aspect of the business from property management to financial analysis. But she also spent time with her grandfather, learning family history and understanding the journey that had brought them to their current prosperity. "Your father succeeded not because he forgot where he came from, but because he remembered and decided to change what that place could become," Roberto told Sophia during one of their long conversations. That's the secret to meaningful success. Never forgetting your roots while refusing to be limited by them. Sophia's college years were marked by academic excellence and innovative projects that combined business acumen with environmental advocacy. She developed a plan for converting aging office buildings into energy-positive structures that actually generated more power than they consumed, a concept that attracted attention from both environmental groups and real estate developers. By her junior year, Sophia had founded her own nonprofit organization focused on helping small businesses implement sustainable practices affordably. The organization's success led to speaking engagements and consulting opportunities that helped spread her model to other cities and communities. "She's already surpassing what I accomplished at her age," Danny told Elena with obvious pride. "But more importantly, she's doing it while staying connected to her values and her community. That's the real measure of success." Roberto, now approaching 80 but still mentally sharp and physically active, had become a local celebrity for his transformation story. He regularly spoke at community events about the importance of believing in children's potential and the dangers of letting fear masquerade as protection. "I wasted years of my son's childhood trying to prepare him for failure," Roberto would tell audiences of parents and community leaders. "I thought I was being realistic, but I was actually being selfish. I was protecting myself from disappointment by limiting his dreams." Don't make my mistake. The 25th anniversary of Danny's acquisition of Meridian Financial Plaza was marked with a celebration that brought together hundreds of scholarship recipients, community leaders, business partners, and family members. The event showcased not just Danny's individual success but the ripple effects of that success throughout the community. Sophia, now a college senior with job offers from major corporations and graduate school acceptances, announced her decision to join her father's company after graduation. But she also announced her intention to establish a new division focused exclusively on sustainable development and community-led environmental initiatives. "I'm not joining the family business to continue what my father built," Sophia explained to the anniversary celebration crowd. "I'm joining to transform it into something that reflects the challenges and opportunities of my generation." Success isn't just about what we accomplish anymore. It's about whether our accomplishments help or hurt the planet we're leaving for future generations. Roberto's speech at the anniversary celebration brought the audience to its feet. 25 years ago, my son bought this building and changed our family's story," he said, his voice still strong despite his advanced age. But the real story isn't about one man's success. It's about what happens when success is shared, when opportunity is multiplied, when someone who could have forgotten where they came from chooses instead to transform where they came from. As the celebration concluded, 3 generations of the Martinez family stood together in the lobby of Meridian Financial Plaza, the building that had symbolized everything impossible and had become the foundation for everything achieved. Roberto, the man who had once believed limitations were destiny, Danny, the son who had refused to accept those limitations, and Sophia, the granddaughter who would carry their legacy into a future full of possibilities they could barely imagine. "You know what I've learned?" Roberto asked his son and granddaughter as they stood together in the building's soaring lobby. "I've learned that you'll never amount to anything can become you can amount to everything with just one change. Someone has to believe it's possible. Once that belief exists, it spreads like fire, lighting up possibilities in every direction." Danny smiled, understanding that his father's cruel prediction had indeed become the catalyst for amounting to everything. Not just in terms of wealth or property, but in terms of family healing, community impact, and generational transformation. The boy who had pressed his face against truck windows to stare at impossible buildings had grown into a man who made the impossible accessible to others. Sophia looked up at her father and grandfather, seeing in their bond the power of redemption and second chances. She understood that her own future success would be measured not just by what she achieved, but by how she used those achievements to expand possibilities for others. The building around them wasn't just her father's triumph. It was a symbol of what became possible when people refused to accept limitations as permanent truths. The story that had begun with a father's harsh words had become a testament to the transformative power of believing in potential rather than accepting limitations. 3 generations had learned that success wasn't about escaping your origins, but about transforming them, not about forgetting where you came from, but about changing what that place could become. As they walked toward the exit together, Roberto paused to look back at the building that had represented everything beyond his son's reach, and had become everything his family had built together. "Sometimes," he said quietly, "the most powerful words are the ones we refuse to believe." Sophia graduated from Northwestern with dual degrees in business and environmental science, turning down lucrative offers from Fortune 500 companies to join Martinez Development full-time. Her first project was ambitious, converting an abandoned factory complex in Pilsen into a zero-emission mixed-use development that would house both affordable apartments and green technology startups. "People said I was crazy to turn down Goldman Sachs to work for my father's company," Sophia told a reporter from Forbes during a feature on young environmental entrepreneurs. "But I didn't want to spend my career making rich people richer. I wanted to prove that environmental responsibility and social justice could be profitable business strategies." Roberto, now 82 and using a cane but still mentally sharp, served as Sophia's unofficial advisor on the Pilsen project. His decades of living in the neighborhood gave him insights that no market research could provide. "The people here need jobs and affordable housing," he told Sophia during one of their project planning sessions. "But they also need to feel proud of where they live. Make sure your development does both." The Pilsen Green Complex, as it became known, faced significant opposition from both environmental purists who thought any development was harmful, and community activists who feared gentrification would drive out longtime residents. Sophia spent months attending community meetings, listening to concerns and modifying her plans to address legitimate fears while maintaining the project's environmental and economic goals. "My grandfather taught me that real change happens when you listen more than you talk," Sophia explained to skeptical community members during a particularly heated meeting. "I'm not here to impose my vision on your neighborhood. I'm here to work with you to create something that serves everyone who calls this place home." Danny watched his daughter navigate the complex politics of community development with pride and occasional anxiety. At 55, he'd learned that success brought its own burdens, including the responsibility to make decisions that affected hundreds of families and dozens of businesses. Sophia was learning those same lessons at 22, but with the confidence that came from growing up in a family that believed in her capabilities. The Green Development Project became Sophia's proving ground in ways no one had anticipated. When the original contractor disappeared with a significant portion of the construction funds, Sophia had to rebuild the project from scratch, while managing angry investors, frustrated community members, and her own crushing sense of responsibility for the failure. "This is when you find out what you're really made of," Roberto told his granddaughter during the darkest period of the crisis. "When everything falls apart and people are counting on you, do you run away or do you find a way to fix it? Your father faced this same test when his business almost failed during the recession. Now it's your turn." Sophia's response to the crisis revealed leadership qualities that impressed even Danny. Instead of hiding from the disaster, she held weekly community meetings to update residents on her progress finding solutions. She personally guaranteed the project's completion using her own trust fund, and she worked 18-hour days to identify new contractors and financing sources. "I could have walked away and blamed the contractor for stealing our money," Sophia told the community during one of her updates. "But that would have meant abandoning you and abandoning everything my family believes in. We don't give up on people, and we don't give up on communities. This project will be completed, even if I have to build it with my own hands." The Pilsen Green Complex was finally completed 18 months behind schedule but under budget, thanks to Sophia's creative solutions and relentless determination. The development became a model for sustainable community development, featuring solar panels, rainwater collection systems, and urban gardens maintained by residents. More importantly, it provided 75 affordable housing units and created over 200 permanent jobs in the green technology sector. Elena had been watching her daughter's leadership development with the trained eye of someone who understood the pressure of high-stakes decision-making. "She's learning that real leadership isn't about having all the answers," Elena told Danny. "It's about staying committed to your values even when everything goes wrong." Roberto's health began declining during Sophia's second year at the company, but his mind remained clear and his commitment to the family's mission unwavering. He spent his mornings working with scholarship program participants and his afternoons sharing stories with Sophia about the neighborhood's history and the changes he'd witnessed over 8 decades. "I want you to understand something important," Roberto told Sophia during one of their regular conversations. "Success isn't about how much money you make or how many buildings you own. Success is about how many people's lives are better because you existed. Your father understood that. Now you're understanding it too." Sophia had begun dating Marcus Chen, a young lawyer who worked with immigrants seeking asylum. Their relationship developed slowly, built on shared values about service and social justice, rather than attraction to wealth or status. Marcus's parents had immigrated from Taiwan with nothing, and his perspective on economic mobility complemented Sophia's understanding of generational transformation. "I love that Sophia found someone who sees wealth as a tool rather than a goal," Elena told Danny as they watched Sophia and Marcus volunteer together at the scholarship program's college preparation workshops. "They're going to build something meaningful together, just like we did." Danny's role in the company had evolved into strategic oversight and mentorship, allowing Sophia to take primary responsibility for new projects while learning from his experience with complex development challenges. Their working relationship was built on mutual respect and complementary skills, with Danny providing historical context and Sophia bringing fresh perspectives on environmental and social issues. The scholarship program had grown to serve over 3,000 students annually, with an endowment large enough to ensure its continuation for generations. Sophia had digitized many of the program's operations, creating an alumni network that connected graduates across industries and geographic locations. The program's success had inspired similar initiatives in 12 other cities, spreading the Martinez family's model of combining business success with community development. Roberto's 80th birthday celebration was held in the community center at Meridian Financial Plaza, with over 500 guests including scholarship recipients, community leaders, business partners, and 3 generations of family members. The event showcased not just Roberto's personal transformation, but the ripple effects of that transformation throughout the community. 40 years ago, I told my son he'd never amount to anything, Roberto said during his birthday speech, his voice still strong despite his advanced age. Today I'm surrounded by proof that when you believe in people's potential, they don't just succeed, they help others succeed too. That's the real meaning of legacy. Sophia's presentation during the birthday celebration outlined her vision for the next phase of Martinez Development's growth. She proposed establishing a national network of sustainable development projects that would share resources, expertise, and financing while maintaining local community control and environmental standards. "We're not trying to become the biggest real estate company in America," Sophia explained to the assembled guests. "We're trying to prove that development can heal communities instead of harming them, that profit and purpose can support each other, and that business success can be measured by how much good it creates, rather than just how much money it generates." Marcus had proposed to Sophia during the birthday celebration, presenting a ring made from recycled materials and asking for her hand in marriage during Roberto's speech. The proposal was perfectly timed and reflected the family's values, focusing on commitment and shared mission rather than expensive displays of wealth. Roberto cried when Sofia showed him the engagement ring, understanding that his granddaughter had found a partner who would support her dreams rather than limit them. "This is what love looks like," he told Marcus during their private conversation after the proposal. "Love believes in possibilities, even when they seem impossible." The wedding planning process revealed how much the family's dynamics had changed over the past 3 decades. Instead of traditional displays of wealth, Sofia and Marcus chose to hold their ceremony in the community garden at the Pilsen Green complex, with catering provided by businesses that employed scholarship program graduates. The celebration was designed to showcase the community they'd helped build rather than the money they could spend. Danny's father of the bride's speech at the wedding reception brought many guests to tears. "My daughter taught me that the next generation doesn't just inherit what we've built," he said. "They transform it into something we never could have imagined." Sofia and Marcus aren't just joining their lives together, they're joining their missions together, and that makes all of us stronger. Roberto, now 85 and visibly frail but still mentally sharp, gave the wedding's closing benediction. "I once believed that people like us were destined for limitation and struggle," he said, his voice carrying across the garden, where former gang members worked alongside environmental scientists and former prisoners mentored college-bound teenagers. "Today, I'm watching my granddaughter marry someone who shares her commitment to making the impossible possible. That's not just a wedding, that's a promise to the future." Sofia and Marcus's honeymoon was spent visiting sustainable development projects in Costa Rica and Denmark, studying models they might adapt for their work in Chicago. Their partnership was built on shared professional goals as much as personal affection, creating a foundation for both marriage and social impact that previous generations of their families had never experienced. Roberto's health continued to decline gradually, but he remained mentally engaged with the family's work until the end. His final project was recording video messages for future scholarship recipients, sharing lessons he'd learned about the dangers of limiting beliefs and the power of transformed perspectives. "If you're watching this, it means someone believed in your potential enough to invest in your education," Roberto said in one of his recorded messages. "But more importantly, it means you've learned to believe in your own potential. Don't waste that gift. Use your success to create opportunities for others, just like someone created opportunities for you." Roberto passed away peacefully at age 87, surrounded by 3 generations of family members who had all learned to see possibilities where he had once seen only limitations. His funeral was attended by over 1,000 people whose lives had been touched by his transformation and the ripple effects of the family's commitment to community development. Sofia was 6 months pregnant with her first child when her grandfather died, carrying the 4th generation of a family that had learned to transform limitations into possibilities. The baby, due to be born in the same month Roberto had first told Danny he'd never amount to anything, would grow up in a world shaped by her great-grandfather's journey from discouragement to belief. He got to see that his great-grandchild would grow up believing in unlimited possibilities, Sofia told the funeral gathering. "That's not just a family legacy. That's a gift to the future." Every child who grows up believing they can achieve anything helps create a world where more children can achieve anything. Danny, now approaching 60 and thinking about his own legacy, realized that Roberto's harsh words had indeed set everything in motion. Without the challenge of proving his father wrong, Danny might never have developed the determination that led to his business success. Without that success, he couldn't have created the scholarship program that had changed thousands of lives. And without those experiences, Sofia wouldn't have learned to see business as a vehicle for social transformation. Sometimes the worst thing that happens to you becomes the best thing that ever happened to everyone around you, Danny reflected during Roberto's memorial service. "Dad's inability to believe in my potential forced me to believe in it so strongly that I spent my life helping others believe in their own potential. His limitation became our liberation." The memorial service concluded with the announcement of the Roberto Martinez Foundation for Belief and Possibility, established by Sofia and Marcus to support parents who wanted to encourage their children's dreams but didn't know how. The foundation would provide parenting education, family counseling, and community support to help break cycles of limiting beliefs before they could damage the next generation. As the fourth generation of the Martinez family grew in Sofia's womb, the building that had once symbolized everything impossible continued to serve as headquarters for everything that had become possible. Roberto's transformation from skeptical father to proud grandfather had rippled outward through scholarship recipients, community development projects, and family healing initiatives that touched lives across the country. The story that had begun with "you'll never amount to anything" had become proof that people could amount to everything they were willing to believe possible, and that the most powerful inheritance wasn't money or property, but the courage to believe in unlimited potential and the wisdom to use that potential in service of others. Standing in the lobby of Meridian Financial Plaza, now 30 years after his original acquisition, Danny understood that his father's cruel prediction had become the foundation for a legacy that would continue long after all of them were gone. Sometimes the most devastating words could become the most transformative gifts, if someone had the courage to prove them wrong and the wisdom to help others do the same. The building still rose into the Chicago skyline, but now it represented something different than when 8-year-old Danny had pressed his face against his father's truck window. It represented the power of transformed beliefs, the possibility of generational healing, and the understanding that success without service was just another form of failure. Roberto's voice seemed to echo through the marble lobby. Real love believes in possibilities, even when they seem impossible. The man who had once crushed dreams had learned to nurture them, and his transformation had become the foundation for transforming everything that came after. Sofia's daughter Isabella was born on a snowy February morning, exactly 50 years to the day after Roberto had first told Danny he'd never amount to anything. The timing wasn't lost on any of the family members who gathered at the hospital to welcome the newest Martinez into the world. Danny held his granddaughter for the first time while snow fell outside the windows of Northwestern Memorial Hospital, the same hospital where he'd been born 48 years earlier. "She has your eyes," Elena told Sofia as they watched Danny cradle the baby. "But more importantly, she has your grandfather's second chance. She'll grow up in a world where believing in yourself isn't revolutionary. It's expected." Sofia smiled through her exhaustion, understanding that Isabella would never know the fear and limitation that had once defined their family's story. Marcus had taken paternity leave from his law practice to help with the baby and to work on a new project with Sofia, a legal clinic that provided free services to families navigating the challenges of starting small businesses in underserved communities. The clinic was housed in Meridian Financial Plaza, occupying space that had been renovated specifically to serve entrepreneurs who might otherwise lack access to legal guidance. "We're creating an ecosystem," Sofia explained to a documentary crew that was filming the family's story for a series about generational change in America. "Every service and resource that successful people take for granted we're making available to people who traditionally haven't had access. Legal services, business mentoring, financial literacy education, networking opportunities, all in one place." Danny's role had evolved into something he'd never expected: corporate philosopher and family historian. At 60, he spent much of his time speaking at universities and business conferences about the intersection of profit and purpose, sharing lessons learned from 3 decades of building a business that prioritized community impact alongside financial returns. "Success without service is just accumulation," became Danny's signature phrase during his speaking engagements. "But service without sustainability is just charity." The goal is to create systems that generate both profit and positive impact indefinitely, so that good work can continue long after the original founders are gone. The Roberto Martinez Foundation for Belief and Possibility had grown beyond anyone's initial expectations, serving families in 43 cities and establishing partnerships with schools, community centers, and social service agencies. The foundation's core message was simple: children achieve what their families believe is possible, and communities achieve what their children believe is possible. Isabella's first year was marked by remarkable growth in all the family's initiatives. The scholarship program graduated its largest class ever, with 847 students receiving college degrees and 312 starting graduate or professional programs. The sustainable development projects had expanded to include affordable housing communities in 8 cities, all designed according to Sofia's environmental standards and community engagement principles. Elena had been appointed to the board of directors of the American Medical Association, where she advocated for policies that would increase healthcare access in underserved communities. Her work had helped establish community health centers in 12 cities, many of them located in buildings owned or developed by Martinez Development. We're proving that when institutions work together instead of competing, everyone benefits, Elena told a congressional committee considering healthcare reform legislation. Business, medicine, education, and social services can all support each other when they share common values and complementary goals. Marcus's legal clinic had become a model for other cities, providing free services to over 2,000 small business owners while training law students in community-based practice. His work had helped establish 127 new businesses in formerly disinvested neighborhoods, creating jobs and economic opportunities that hadn't existed before. Isabella's second birthday celebration was held in the community garden at the Pilsen Green Complex, now thriving with vegetables, flowers, and fruit trees, tended by residents of all ages. The little girl toddled among the plants, while dozens of scholarship recipients, business partners, and community members shared food and stories about the changes they'd witnessed in their neighborhoods. "She's growing up in a completely different world than any of us did," Danny told Sophia as they watched Isabella play with children whose grandparents had been scholarship recipients. "She'll never know what it feels like to be told that success isn't for people like her." Sophia nodded, but her expression was thoughtful. "That's both a blessing and a responsibility," she said. "She'll need to understand that her advantages come with obligations, that success isn't just about what you achieve, but about what you make possible for others." The conversation reflected Sophia's growing awareness that raising a child in privilege, even privilege earned through service and hard work, required careful attention to values and perspective. She and Marcus had already begun planning Isabella's education to include regular volunteer work, exposure to different economic circumstances, and understanding of the struggles that previous generations had overcome. Danny's business had reached a plateau that felt both satisfying and challenging. Martinez Development owned or managed 43 properties across the Midwest, employed over 3,000 people directly, and had created an estimated 12,000 indirect jobs through its development projects. The company's success had created opportunities for growth, but also questions about how large it should become. "We could expand nationally, even internationally," Danny told his board of directors during a strategic planning session. "But expansion would require compromises in our community engagement model. The question isn't whether we can grow bigger, but whether we should." Sophia had strong opinions about the expansion question. "Size isn't the goal," she argued during family strategy discussions. "Impact is the goal. If we can have more impact by staying focused on the communities we already serve, that's what we should do. If we can have more impact by expanding thoughtfully, then that's what we should do. But we should never expand just because we can." The decision ultimately came down to a family vote, including input from Elena and even from Marcus as Sophia's partner and co-parent of the next generation. The unanimous decision was to maintain their current geographic focus while deepening their impact through new types of projects and services. Isabella's third birthday marked the establishment of the Martinez Development Institute, a research and training center that would teach other developers how to implement sustainable, community-focused development practices. The institute was housed in a renovated warehouse in Pilsen, creating a campus where developers, community organizers, environmental scientists, and social entrepreneurs could collaborate on innovative solutions. "We're not trying to franchise our model," Sophia explained during the institute's launch event. "We're trying to open source it. We want to share everything we've learned so that other people can adapt our approaches to their own communities and circumstances." The institute's first major project was developing a toolkit for community-led development that could be customized for different cities, climates, and economic conditions. The toolkit included everything from financing strategies to environmental assessment methods to community engagement protocols. Danny's 60th birthday celebration was intentionally low-key, reflecting his preference for meaningful gatherings over expensive displays. The family held a dinner at home, with Isabella helping to serve cake to guests who included scholarship recipients, business partners, and community leaders who had become extended family over the years. 60 years ago, I was born into a family that believed in limitations, Danny said during his birthday reflection. Today, I'm celebrating with a family that believes in possibilities. That transformation didn't happen overnight, and it didn't happen because of one person. It happened because people chose to believe in each other's potential and to work together to make that potential real. Sophia's announcement during the birthday dinner surprised everyone, including Marcus. She was pregnant with their second child, due in the fall. Isabella is going to be a big sister, Sophia said, watching her daughter clap excitedly even though she didn't fully understand what the words meant. Another generation of possibility, Elena said, raising her glass in a toast. Another chance to prove that love and support can transform everything. The second pregnancy proceeded smoothly, with Sophia continuing her work on development projects while preparing for expanded family responsibilities. She and Marcus had decided to name the baby Roberto if it was a boy, honoring the grandfather whose transformation had made everything else possible. Roberto Martinez Jr. was born on a warm October evening, with Isabella present to meet her baby brother minutes after his birth. The family gathering in the hospital room included 4 generations of transformation, from limitation to possibility, from fear to faith, from isolation to community. He's gonna grow up in a world we could barely imagine when this all started, Danny told Elena as they held their newest grandson. But more importantly, he's going to help create a world we can't imagine yet. Sophia's maternity leave was spent developing her most ambitious project yet, a comprehensive plan for transforming an entire neighborhood through integrated development that included affordable housing, sustainable businesses, educational facilities, healthcare services, and recreational spaces. The plan was designed to be implemented over 20 years, creating a model for holistic community development that other cities could adapt and replicate. We're not just building buildings anymore, Sophia explained to city planning officials who were reviewing her proposal. We're building systems that support human flourishing across generations. Every decision we make has to consider not just immediate needs, but long-term sustainability and community resilience. The approval process for Sophia's comprehensive development plan took 2 years, requiring extensive community input, environmental impact studies, and financial planning. But the result was unanimous approval from City Council and enthusiastic support from residents who had been involved in every stage of the planning process. Ground was broken on the new development on Roberto Sr.'s birthday, 5 years after his death. Isabella, now 7, helped turn the first shovel of dirt while her 4-year-old brother Roberto watched from Marcus's shoulders. The ceremony included speeches from scholarship recipients who had become doctors, teachers, business owners, and community leaders. This development represents everything my great-grandfather learned about the power of believing in people, Isabella said during her remarks, reading from notes Sophia had helped her prepare. He started by not believing in my grandpa, but he ended up believing in everyone. Now we get to build a place where everyone can believe in themselves. Danny watched his granddaughter speak with tears in his eyes, remembering the 8-year-old boy who had pressed his face against truck windows to stare at impossible buildings. That boy had grown up to own buildings. But more importantly, he'd grown up to create opportunities for other children to believe in their own impossible dreams. As the ceremony concluded and families dispersed to their homes throughout the city, Danny stood for a moment in the empty lot where the new development would rise. 55 years after his father had first told him he'd never amount to anything, Danny understood that the most important thing he'd amounted to wasn't wealth, or property, or even community impact. The most important thing he'd amounted to was proof that people could change, that families could heal, that communities could transform, and that the cruelest words could become the foundation for the kindest actions. Roberto's limitation had become everyone's liberation, and that liberation would continue rippling outward for generations yet to come. Sophia joined her father in the empty lot, carrying Roberto Jr. while Isabella ran ahead to explore the construction site. "Think great-grandpa would be proud?" she asked, watching her children play where affordable homes and sustainable businesses would soon provide opportunities for hundreds of families. "I think he'd be amazed," Danny replied. "Not just by what we've accomplished, but by who we've become. He learned that love means believing in possibilities, even when they seem impossible. Now we get to teach Isabella and Roberto Jr. that love means making those possibilities real for everyone." The story that had begun with a father's harsh prediction had become a testament to the transformative power of refusing to accept limitations as permanent truths. As the sun set over Chicago and the Martinez family headed home to their dinner table, the empty lot held the promise of everything yet to be built, everything yet to be achieved, and everyone yet to be inspired by the understanding that you can indeed amount to anything you're willing to believe possible. The comprehensive neighborhood development project, officially named the Roberto Martinez Memorial Community, took shape over the following 3 years, as Sophia's vision became reality. Isabella, now 10, had become fascinated with architecture and urban planning, often accompanying her mother to construction sites and community meetings, where she would sketch building designs and ask detailed questions about sustainable construction methods. "Mom, why do all the solar panels face the same direction?" Isabella asked during one of their site visits, her notebook filled with careful drawings of the residential buildings under construction. Sophia smiled, recognizing her daughter's natural curiosity about how things worked and how they could work better. "They face south to capture the most sunlight throughout the day," Sophia explained, leading Isabella to the community center building where they could get a better view of the entire development. "But you're asking good questions. Some newer solar panel systems can track the sun's movement throughout the day. Maybe that's something we should consider for future projects." Roberto Jr., now 7, had developed his own interests that complemented his sister's technical focus. He was fascinated by the social aspects of community development, often asking why certain families had been chosen for the affordable housing units and how the selection process worked. His questions revealed an early understanding of fairness and social justice that impressed both his parents and grandparents. "Roberto wants to make sure everyone gets a fair chance," Marcus told Sophia, as they watched their son carefully divide his Halloween candy among the neighborhood children, making sure the younger kids got extra pieces. "He has your grandfather's heart for justice, but without having to overcome the limitations your grandfather faced." Danny's speaking engagements had evolved into teaching positions at Northwestern's business school and the University of Chicago's social work program. His courses on business as community development and sustainable wealth creation consistently had waiting lists, attracting students who wanted to learn how to build successful enterprises that also served social purposes. Professor Martinez, one of his students, asked during a particularly engaging class discussion, "How do you balance the pressure to maximize profits with your commitment to community development? Don't shareholders expect you to prioritize financial returns above everything else?" Danny smiled at the question, remembering when he'd faced the same dilemma during his early years in business. "The key is choosing the right shareholders," he replied. "When you build a company around clear values and mission, you attract investors who share those values. Yes, they expect good financial returns, but they also expect social impact. It's not either or, it's both and." Elena had been appointed as Director of Community Health Initiatives for the Chicago Department of Public Health, a role that allowed her to implement citywide policies based on lessons learned from the family's various development projects. Her work had resulted in the establishment of health clinics in 12 underserved neighborhoods, many of them housed in buildings developed by Martinez Development. The Roberto Martinez Memorial Community reached full occupancy in its 4th year, housing 234 families in affordable apartments, while also hosting 37 small businesses, 2 schools, a community health clinic, and a senior center. The development had become a model for integrated community planning, attracting visitors from around the world who wanted to study Sophia's approach to sustainable urban development. Isabella's 11th birthday party was held in the community center, with guests including children from all economic backgrounds who had become friends through the development's integrated programming. The party featured a science fair where Isabella presented her project on improved solar panel efficiency, while Roberto Jr. organized a debate about fair resource distribution that impressed the adults with its sophistication. "They're growing up to be leaders," Elena told Sophia as they watched the children engage with complex topics while still maintaining the joy and curiosity of childhood. "But more importantly, they're growing up to be citizens who understand that their success is connected to everyone else's success." Sophia had been invited to speak at the United Nations Conference on Sustainable Development, sharing her model for community-integrated housing that addressed environmental, economic, and social challenges simultaneously. The invitation represented international recognition of her work, but also raised questions about how to scale local solutions to global challenges. "The UN wants me to present our approach as a model for urban development worldwide," Sophia told the family during one of their regular Sunday dinners. "But I'm worried about the risks of promoting one-size-fits-all solutions when every community has unique needs and circumstances." Danny understood his daughter's concerns, having faced similar questions about expansion and replication throughout his own career. "Maybe the model isn't the specific buildings or programs we've created," he suggested. "Maybe the model is the process. How we listen to communities, how we integrate different types of development, how we measure success in terms of human flourishing rather than just financial returns. Marcus had been appointed to lead a national task force on community-based legal services, drawing on his experience with the legal clinic to help other cities establish similar programs. His work required extensive travel, but he maintained his commitment to family time and local community engagement through careful scheduling and technology. The scholarship program had reached a milestone that amazed even Danny. Over 10,000 graduates now worked in various fields throughout the Midwest, with many having started their own businesses or nonprofit organizations. The program's alumni network had become a powerful force for economic development in formerly disinvested communities. Isabella's interest in architecture had evolved into a passion for designing affordable housing that was both environmentally sustainable and aesthetically beautiful. At 12, she was already sketching building designs that incorporated advanced environmental systems with community gathering spaces and accessible features for people with disabilities. "I want to prove that affordable doesn't have to mean ugly," Isabella explained to her grandfather during one of their regular design discussions. "Poor people deserve beautiful buildings too. Architecture should make everyone feel proud of where they live, not just rich people." Roberto Jr.'s social consciousness had led him to organize fundraising drives at school for various causes, from disaster relief to local food banks. His ability to motivate his classmates and coordinate complex volunteer efforts suggested leadership skills that might eventually be channeled toward politics or nonprofit management. "Roberto has a gift for bringing people together around shared goals," his teacher told Sophia during a parent conference. "He seems to understand instinctively that people work harder for causes they believe in than for rewards they're promised." Danny's relationship with his grandchildren had become one of the greatest joys of his later life. Every Saturday morning, he would take Isabella and Roberto Jr. on what they called possibility walks through different Chicago neighborhoods, talking about the history of each area and discussing how communities could be improved through thoughtful development and community engagement. "Grandpa, why did some neighborhoods get better and others get worse?" Roberto Jr. asked during one of their walks through a struggling area on the city's south side. "It seems like the people work just as hard everywhere we go." Danny paused, considering how to explain complex historical and economic factors to a 7-year-old. "Sometimes communities don't get the same opportunities for investment and support," he said carefully. "But that's changing as more people understand that everyone benefits when everyone has a chance to succeed." Sophia's UN presentation was scheduled for the fall, requiring months of preparation and coordination with international development experts. The opportunity represented a chance to share their model globally, but also forced the family to articulate their approach in ways that could be understood and adapted by people from very different cultural and economic circumstances. "We need to be careful not to assume that what works in Chicago will work everywhere," Sophia told the team, helping her prepare for the presentation. "Every community has its own history, its own challenges, its own strengths. Our role should be to share tools and principles, not to prescribe specific solutions." The Roberto Martinez Foundation for Belief and Possibility had expanded its programming to include leadership development for young adults who had grown up in families affected by limiting beliefs. The program helped college students and early career professionals learn to navigate success while maintaining connections to their communities of origin. Elena's public health work had attracted national attention, leading to consulting opportunities with federal agencies and international health organizations. Her research on the connections between housing quality, community development, and health outcomes had influenced policy recommendations in 12 countries. Isabella's 12th birthday marked her decision to attend a specialized high school program that would allow her to dual enroll in architecture and environmental science courses at Northwestern University. The decision reflected both her academic abilities and her clear sense of purpose about how she wanted to contribute to the family's mission. "I want to design buildings that heal the planet instead of hurting it," Isabella announced during her birthday dinner. "And I want to make sure those buildings are places where all kinds of people can afford to live and work and learn together." Roberto Jr. had started a peer mediation program at his elementary school, helping younger children resolve conflicts and learn to work together effectively. His natural diplomatic skills and genuine concern for fairness had made him popular with both students and teachers. Marcus's National Task Force had produced a comprehensive report on expanding access to legal services in underserved communities, with recommendations that were being implemented in over 30 cities. His work had demonstrated that community-based legal clinics could be both financially sustainable and socially transformative. As Danny read the final report that evening, sitting in his office overlooking the city skyline where it all began, he reflected on the extraordinary journey from his father's crushing words to this moment. Roberto's prediction that he'd never amount to anything had become the catalyst for everything they'd built together. Not just buildings and businesses, but lives transformed, communities healed, and possibilities multiplied across generations. The scared 8-year-old boy who had pressed his face against a truck window, staring at impossible buildings, had indeed amounted to something far beyond what anyone could have imagined. But more importantly, he'd helped thousands of others understand that they too could amount to anything they were willing to believe possible. Through the window of Meridian Financial Plaza, Danny could see the lights of the Roberto Martinez Memorial Community, where families were settling in for the evening in homes that proved affordable housing could be beautiful, sustainable, and dignity-affirming. Tomorrow, Sophia would continue preparing for her UN presentation, Isabella would refine her architectural designs, and Roberto Jr. would organize another playground improvement campaign. Roberto's harsh words had been transformed into a family motto written on a plaque in the building's lobby. What we amount to is limited only by what we're willing to believe possible and work together to achieve. The man who had once believed in limitations had inadvertently become the foundation for unlimited possibility. Danny smiled, understanding that the greatest inheritance he could leave his grandchildren wasn't money or property, but the knowledge that cruel predictions could become catalysts for extraordinary achievements, and that the most powerful response to, quote, "You'll never amount to anything," was simply to prove that everyone could amount to everything. The end.